Welcome to Bits About Books, the home for conversations with authors of breakthrough books on sales, marketing, and business. I am your host, Shubhanjan Sarkar, founder of Pitchling, the next generation buyer-seller engagement platform, where our mission is to make buying easy. Our guest today is Lynn Hidy, and we speak about her book, Mastering Inside Sales Leadership.
I would love to tell you that I've ever had a job where there was enough leads coming in to make me enough the kind of money I wanted to make, but there really has never, right? There's always been that outbound activity requirement. But tech adopted early, right? Because they could do the entire sales presentation demo virtually. You didn't have to be in a room to show someone a demo of software.
Lynn Hidy, founder of upyourtelesales.com, helps inside sales leaders build confident, high-performing virtual teams without losing their minds or their humor. Known for her clarity, candor, and results-driven style, her book, Mastering Inside Sales Leadership, delivers practical strategies that actually work in today's inside sales world. Now, for an inside look at inside sales, meet Lynn Hidy. Lynn, welcome to Bits About Books. I'm so happy that you could make time and we could actually have this conversation about this very interesting new book that you have written on inside sales. I mean, it has been a very neglected sort of area. If you look at the plethora of books that have been written over the last couple of years, inside sales sort of was not in conversation. So I'm very excited to talk to you about it. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here. It's funny that you say neglected, because I think even in the sales field, the inside teams are typically neglected in their organizations as well.
Right. Why did you want to write this book, Lynn?
So I have to say, disclaimer, I've always said I'm not writing a book. Like, for years, people are like, Lynn, you should write, I'm not writing a book. I'm not writing a book. And what ended up happening is I had a course that was a 12-session course trying to help inside sales leaders really create the team that they wanted and needed, and create the career that they wanted and needed. And a friend and colleague, Bryn Tillman, said, "You already have a book." And I'm like, "No, I don't." She's like, "Well, you have the structure for a book." And that kind of convinced me that it was doable to take the course and create a narrative around the course content and write the book. So it's really designed as a playbook rather than just a book that people read.
Right. So why inside sales? I mean, tell me a bit about that.
So that's my world. So my 30-year inside sales anniversary will be January 8th, 2026.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Which happens to be the date I picked to launch the book, right? Felt like a 30th anniversary present to myself. I've never been in outside sales, right? So I've been in individual contributor positions and leadership positions from an inside sales perspective. And actually, one of my jobs was translating outside sales focused training for the company I worked for, right? That, all right, we're going to train the outside sales team. Send your people, but the language wasn't the same. The activities and the way that we worked was not the same. So it's been my universe for 30 years, and it really, I like to tell people, I used to say back in the day when it was just a telephone, that right, you had to have a good voice that your personality came across, and it was a different world, right?
Yeah. Somehow I think the term inside sales came in a little later. I don't think at that point, I mean, when you started, inside sales was not a thing.
Yep.
That was I mean, you could call it telecalling, you could call it whatever, but you are not calling it inside
Right.
sales.
So telesales.
Yeah,
I've always been involved in the business to business side. So I've never been the
right.
person calling you at your house when you're trying to eat dinner.
Hmm.
But yeah, always corporate to corporate
Right,
sales.
right. So basically, I think when HubSpot came and they sort of started talking about inbound, I think around that time, which is about 10, 12 years back,
Mm-hmm.
when the inside sales terminology actually came into being.
Yep.
And I always felt, Lynn, that with the globalization of sales, so I'm from India,
Yep.
right? Although I spend a lot of time in Canada and North America and here, so mostly during winter, I run away and I come to India. You know uh, so what I saw was that with this global sales happening, with this whole
Mm-hmm.
global thing, it was really inside sales that was most of sales.
And I think it's especially true, and HubSpot definitely focuses on the inbound, like
Right.
marketing to sales activity. And there are many sales organizations from an inside sales perspective that are outbound focused.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I would love to tell you that I've ever had a job where there was enough leads coming in to make me enough the kind of money I wanted to make, but there really has never, right? There's always been
Sure.
that outbound activity requirement. But tech adopted early, right?
Mm.
Because they could do the entire sales presentation demo virtually. You didn't have to be in a room to show someone a demo of software. So they definitely adopted earlier rather than later. And companies with wildly different product sets, that my example that I always use as the, like, you would never think there was a product or that you could sell it over the telephone. One of my clients was a company that makes beds for cows. So truly, they have a study from Cornell University that talks about that comfortable cows are happier, and comfortable cows, they make, not only do they produce more milk, but they produce higher quality milk than
Mm.
uncomfortable cows. So yes, you can sell cow beds over the phone to farmers and dairy, especially dairy farmers.
Very, very, very interesting. So let's go back to the book. So you had the course,
Mm-hmm.
you had this course, and Miss Stillman told you that, hey, you have this book ready because you have the course.
Yep.
What happened after that, and how far back are we talking? When was this? When did this conversation take place? When you said, maybe I should write a book?
It happened pretty quickly because I'm someone who needs deadlines. So we talked about it probably last October. So I'm a member of the Women's Sales Experts Organization. That's how I know Bryn. And so that was last October that
Right.
she put that little piece of information into my ear, and I was like, oh, how can I not? Right? Like, okay, yes, she's right. And I
Hmm.
had Colleen Stanley, who wrote the forward to the book, has been the person who always is like, you need to write a book. You have a book in you, right? I will say my AI cheat
Hmm.
is that I took the course, put it into AI, and said to ChatGPT, please pull all of my content that I've ever written that you can find on the web and
Hmm.
categorize it. So I pulled, right, because I've been writing since I started Up Your Telesales 20 years ago. So
Right.
it pulled those anecdotes, right? The things that make a book fun to read for people are
Right.
the stories that are involved.
Of
So
course.
the process I had, because I taught people how to go through the process, and this helped me pull stories. Of course, they weren't quite right, or they weren't up to date, right? So there was a lot of work that was done after that to make
Hmm.
sure that the narrative flowed right. And I have a great editor, so
Of course.
hey, you didn't explain this very well, or because it was a course, some of the things were too repetitive, right? Like, hey, you talk about this here, here, and here, we should just refer back, right? Rather than explaining it again, which you would certainly do if someone was in a class with you, right? You don't need to do that. They have it in the, it's already in the book in chapter 3.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of back and forth like that took all of this and created something that is easy to read.
Yeah, sounds fun. So when you had the first draft, obviously you went through it and you sort of, as you said, you took out the non-relevant material and you put in some relevant material. How long did you take to do this?
So not 40 hours a week, every week, right? That would be crazy. Other people could do that. I could not do that. But probably from start to where it felt finished to me, 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, that's great.
And again, I have a lot of content, right? So the fact that I had a tool that would kind of say, okay, this stuff is about vision, this stuff is about leadership, this stuff is about management, and then that sorting didn't have to be done by me.
Right.
Made a huge difference.
So tell me, did you have the chapter structure already?
So there's 12 chapters and there were 12 sessions in my course. So that was like that framework existed because of the course. And it's a course that I've taught for a while, right? Like the course is something that was created a few years ago. So that flow has been, right? So that chapter flow existed. Again, I don't think I would have said yes if that hadn't been pointed out to me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you'll be tempted to write the next one, but this
Maybe.
one got done.
We'll see. I'm not going to say no because I always said no, I wasn't going to write a book at all. But
Right.
but yes, this got done very quickly. In my opinion, it felt quick.
Yeah. What was the biggest challenge when you wrote this? What really said, this is a bad idea. I shouldn't have got into this.
Making sure there was consistent theme and language. So when you teach a course, each session can be independent of the others. You don't have to use a metaphor across 12 sessions. So there was a lot that I had to start to think about, like, okay, what's the linkage that I can put in for people to read or listen to, right? Depending on how they consume like to consume books, that flows through the whole thing. So that was where the puzzle metaphor came from, that I could take a metaphor like a puzzle and then start talking about each of these things as pieces and how does this fit into an organization. So I had to, that felt heavy when I was doing it, like trying to, before the puzzle came into fruition, that felt like, okay, how do you take something that was 12 independent things and make it consistent and feel like it was always created as a whole?
When I looked at that, I actually looked at that chapter, as I told you, I thought the simplicity of the word puzzle, because everybody understands a puzzle,
right?
What a puzzle is. And every salesperson knows how appropriate that metaphor is for sales. Because you are really tearing your hair out trying to figure why something is not working, right? So yeah, we'll get to that, and I'll request you to talk about it a little more. Did you send out like advance copies to your friends, and did you get feedback? How did that piece work?
Yep. So again, being part of this Women Sales Experts organization gives me the smartest sales experts in the world at my fingertips. So yeah,
True.
there are definitely some of the people in that group that as I was writing, sometimes I would be like, okay, can you look at chapter 4 and chapter 5 and make sure that it goes together as like that it works independently as well as goes together, right? So there was a lot of people that have read pieces and parts of the book. And then I have clients, right? So I have VPs of sales and
Right.
directors of inside sales that once that kind of feeling of completeness was done, that I sent and said, does this work? Like, could you use this to do the work that you and I had done together?
Right.
Granted, some
Right.
of them said I never would do it without you pushing me to do it. But right. So, but that's the difference between someone who wants a course and someone who wants a book. So,
Of course. Of course. Yeah. And what kind of feedback stands out in this process across, whether your customers or your colleagues?
I think the universal truth was more. I want a story about that, right? Like, tell me how that works in our world. More in-depth stories, right? So again, back to my course outline, how you talk about something in a course is you need a lot more narrative
Right.
in a book. So really fleshing out the characters, so to speak, right? Like,
Yeah.
and talking about what's behind what was going on in an organization for each of the people in the story.
Yeah, of course. And unlike in a course, the person can actually ask some clarifying questions, which is not possible when somebody's reading the book, right?
Exactly.
So
Yes.
so I think that makes complete sense that they need to get the 360 degree of what you are talking. Otherwise, it might not make sense to some people who are not initiated enough into the space.
Well, and how about this? Aren't in my head. I don't know if this happens to any of the other authors that you interview, but right, there are things that because I've been talking about it or writing it, right, I'm working on it. It's hard to edit what you've written and
Right.
see those things that are missing.
Yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely. Before we jump into the book, where do you see inside sales? Because, like I said, inside sales as a profession or as a designation or as a process, uh, you you don't hear about it anymore. At least, I mean, not in the kind. I mean, it is not being spoken about as much as it was, say, 5 years back. Not that anything has changed, right?
And I think there are two reasons, right? So number one, we had a pandemic and everybody was an inside salesperson, right?
Exactly.
So, and then number two, people are now talking about AI replacing this need for people taking inbound calls. So I think those two things have kind of shifted how it's viewed. I still call it inside sales because when you talk about virtual sales, which is really what we're doing, right? Because there's more than just the telephone. There's more, right? It's not
Yeah.
telesales anymore. It's
Yeah.
what ends up happening is people think about salespeople working virtually, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're only inside. Right. So most outside salespeople are now working out of their home in the geographic territory that they service.
So it's getting conceptually expanded. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's conceptually changing, certainly.
Okay.
I don't know that we've come up with a good word. So I kept the one that everybody recognizes instantly.
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, it completely makes sense. And you touched upon AI. A lot of what is being called AI is, good old decision trees. They're not really AI.
Yep.
But do you see it actually impacting the need for humans in the inside sales role, say 3, 4, 5 years down the line? Do you think that's going to happen in a big way?
This is going to sound like I'm hedging my bet, but I'm not. I really believe that this is true. So in 2023, I actually spoke at a tech conference in Montreal, and the woman who spoke before me, I'm not a French speaker, right? So me paraphrasing her talk was basically AI is not going to take your job. People who know how to use AI are going to take your job.
Okay.
So I think that the job of a salesperson in general continues to shift, and it's going to look very different. I do think that there are going to be some positions that will at least be eliminated as we know them now. Because people, if you have a really good chat bot that can actually answer your questions,
Yeah.
You might think that's a human. It may or may not be a human, right?
Yeah.
So I think there are certainly jobs that may go away, but I am a firm believer that there, at some point in the sales process, people want to talk to people.
I agree. I mean, there would be commodities. So if a company is purchasing, say, toilet paper, a buyer bot may be talking to a seller bot and negotiating and taking a decision. Pretty much like how algorithmic stock trading happens today, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So that's possible. But if it is anything of a complex nature, anything that is millions of dollars in investment and so on and so forth, I think cutting the human off the loop is going to be a very difficult task.
I do think that it's interesting. Some of the research is now showing that sales engine optimization is less important, still important, but less important than making sure you are AI optimized so that large language models, because people are typing their questions into a large language model, whether it's Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever tool an organization has chosen. People are not going to an internet search. And even when they are, Google is using, unless you tell it not to, it's using an AI model as well, right? So whether you think about it or not, we're all using AI to answer basic questions that we have.
Right. Absolutely. And it works to a great extent. Absolutely. Let's get into the book.
Okay.
Your first chapter, you're talking about planning isn't optional. Why do you need to tell people that planning isn't optional? Why are people not planning?
All right. In inside sales in particular, it feels like a luxury, right? Because other people have plans for you. And so when you have marketing telling you they want you to do this, and the outside sales organization telling you they want you to do that, and operations giving you instructions on what they think is important and a priority for you, a lot of times what I find is that in inside sales in particular, it feels luxurious and almost like a fantasy, right? Because there's so much change that happens that's driven from outside their little piece of the puzzle, if I can use my own metaphor, right? That, territory shift, the team changes. It tends to be, in many organizations, more of a starting point than a career choice, like it has been for me. So, someone comes in because they want a sales job in your organization, and then they're out in 9 to 18 months because they bid for a territory instead. So there's so many things that planning seems like it's not gonna help you, so why bother? But I know that you need a plan, not in spite of the changes, but because of them.
Right. Of course. Of course. I mean, just to keep pace, just to ensure that you're not out of step, you need the plan.
Well, and it needs to be a structure, right? So I think in sales, a lot of times it's like a quarterly plan, a yearly plan feel, rather than creating a structure so that no matter what, you always have a plan, no matter what changes happen. So this is a lot about creating that structure rather than scrambling.
It's time for a short break. Stay with us. After the break,
Inside sales has the ability to measure everything, right? Because it's all happening in a world where there's a computer attached, right? Used to be a telephone attached, but now it's just a computer, right? A headset with a USB port rather than an actual phone. But what happens is that there's so much to measure. We end up measuring everything, which means nothing matters.
you are listening to a Business Podcast Network original. Podcasting is the fastest growing content marketing opportunity, which is untapped. We can help you craft your audio strategy and help leverage the wide reach and easy streaming capability that the smartphone penetration provides. It is easy, it is powerful and personal. Talk to us to find out how podcasting can help you build your brand and reach out to your targets like never before. Write to us at bpn@bizcast.in. That is bpn@bizcast.in. Business Podcast Network. Podcasts end to end. Welcome back. I'm Shubhanjan Sarkar, your host for Bits About Books and founder of PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. Let's dive right back into the episode where we left it. I would like to touch upon a much later chapter in the book on matrix, right? And with plan, I would like to connect that, and I would like to know why still we talk about the correct KPIs, and why do we still focus on activity and not outcomes?
Inside sales has the ability to measure everything, right? Because it's all happening in a world where there's a computer attached, right? Used to be a telephone attached, but now it's just a computer, right? A headset with a USB port rather than an actual phone. But what happens is that there's so much to measure. We end up measuring everything, which means nothing matters.
Yeah.
And that's the error that takes place. I think people are looking at results from a KPI perspective. I think you also, though, to get change to happen, you have to look at what activity is getting people the results today and measure the activity as a piece of it so that you can see the leading indicators to success or the red flags that tell you that something's not going where you need it to go.
Can you unpack this a little more? I mean, what kind of KPIs do you see actually working? And see, end of the day, the sales objective is to generate revenue, right? The broader objective is to deliver outcome that the customer wants, but the salesperson himself or herself may not be in a position to finish that whole cycle.
Yep.
The whole cycle, right? But for them, it is revenue. That can you have you been able to achieve your targets? I mean, of course, we don't want to talk about targets, a whole different can of worms. We will not go there today.
Yeah, goal setting, we would have to have like a whole nother conversation. So I would say that I'm going to use a KPI that is going to sound untrackable for a moment. And that is that the KPI that you're really looking for from an effort perspective is customer connection. Because without connecting with a customer or a prospect, you're never going to find a business opportunity. I always like to look at it as an individual contributor, like it's a pyramid, because everyone talks about the sales funnel, and that always just felt so sad, right? Like that the funnel is big at the top and it's very little at the bottom. But if I looked at it personally as a pyramid, it was like, okay, this is the foundation. So I need to do this thing foundationally, but it's not where I live, right? You don't live in the foundation of your house, right? It builds up from there. So that just always made me feel better. Like, okay, this is the foundation. I need to do this foundational activity so that I can have conversations with human beings. Because that's where the magic is. That's where you're going to hear what's going on in their world and identify where you may be able to fit in.
I love it. I love it. I love this because I completely believe in what you said. A conversation can be started only when the prospect finds some value in talking to you.
Yeah.
That is a great indicator that he has possibly the need for something that you are offering.
And even if they don't know what you offer yet, right? If they're having a conversation with me, they're at least thinking about the things in their business that I may be able to help them with.
Absolutely.
I always say, no one in the world wants to pay for sales training, right? So sales training is an activity. It's not a result, but people will absolutely pay for close cycles that are shorter or more opportunities that are generated or more appointments set for the outside sales team, right? Like those things are what they want to achieve if their team is going to training.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where does leadership fit in? Because your book is about inside sales leadership, right? And one of the conundrums, a couple of years back, I did a series of interviews about this whole 5% conversion problem in B2B sales, right? We are very happy with 5% conversion. Imagine a car company saying 5% of the time the car will run, or an airline saying 5% of the times you're going to land. I mean, any other scenario, 5% would have been a complete train wreck. But we somehow have reconciled to that 5% is our
acceptable, at least
acceptable number, and we also parallelly see that a VP of sales has an average tenure of 18 months.
Actually, I feel like that's, just because I do work with a lot of tech, I feel like that's the latest C-level period is 18 months.
Exactly.
Right? Like, because CIOs, chief information officers or chief technology officers, also 18 months.
So where does leadership fit in? Because it's very difficult to lead. You're getting into a position, in 18 months you'll be out. What are you going to do?
Yeah. So I'm going to first give you my definition. So leadership is about people. Management is about tasks and things. And I think that is often misunderstood as well, right? That we merge in a corporate job, they happen sometimes simultaneously, right? The same meeting you're having with someone is talking about their KPIs, but also talking about where they want to go in their career, right? So there's a juxtaposition and we merge them together. And instead, if we take a minute and decide what leadership means to us, I think it's important because in my experience, most people can tell you what leadership isn't, but cannot necessarily tell you what it is.
Right.
So a lot of times leadership is defined in a negative, like, oh, well, it's not micromanagement, or it's not something, there's a something about what it isn't. So to give everyone in the book a baseline, I said leadership is setting a direction and keeping the operations, activity, and performance of the team on course going in that direction.
Right.
You're in big trouble in sales if you don't have a destination in mind.
Yeah.
And no kind of, I don't know if waypoints are the right. There are navigation points, right? Like, what's the one that you're going towards right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of flows into your talking about individuals and motivation, right? Essentially, you have to look at your team as individual human beings.
Crazy idea.
Who need motivation.
And ultimately, I do believe that you can't motivate people. motivate themselves, and you're creating an environment where
Right.
they know how doing this job is going to get them what they want.
And possibly the freedom to make mistakes.
Oh, that would be lovely if we could have organizations across the board, not just in sales, where making a mistake doesn't mean that you're going to get a tongue lashing and never promoted. And I mean, I feel like things move so quickly that people forget that mistakes are going to, like, let's forget about human error. You're just going to make bad choices.
Yeah.
Or not the best, even maybe not even bad. Sometimes they're just not the best choice, right?
Yeah.
I heard a sales manager saying to someone who had a company that they had done business with for years make a choice to go with a competitor. And instead of doing kind of a debrief, the sales manager was like, if you were a good salesperson, you wouldn't have lost this account. And I was like, wait, like, take a step back, man. Even if we could prove that was true, that was not useful.
I mean, that right there, you stop the learning opportunity, right?
Yep.
Because now I'm defending myself.
Yes. Or shut down, right? One or the other, right? I'm either feel like I need to fight you or I'm just going to say nothing ever again. There's no growth opportunity there.
Let's talk about the 12-month area of focus and then come to your metaphor of puzzle. Let's talk about those two.
So the 12-month area of focus started because, again, I think people try to fix everything all at once. I'm a huge believer in Dan and Chip Heath's book, Switch. The subtitle of which is like how to change things when change is hard. And I think they could have said how to change things because it's always hard. What's the organization's vision? What's the inside sales organization's piece of that vision or the vision for the team? Like, what can inside sales do? And then look at, all right, so let's figure out what's missing, right? It wouldn't be a vision if we were there already, right?
Yeah.
We would have made a new one. So what are the pieces that are missing, and how can we really impact something changing and work to make sure that we can do something? But decide what you want it to look like in 12 months first, and then figure out, okay, what's the gap? And then you're working on, all right, what is the first thing to change? In organizations, sometimes I find they try to change everything that needs to possibly be changed to fill those gaps. But if they did one little thing, got implementation in the next month, you might find that what you need to do next is different, right? Like, okay, now that we've done this piece and we've got it down, step 2, it looks very different than it did before we got step 1 down.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have to have some kind of dynamicity involved, some elasticity there, which is it's not written in stone. You have to respond to how the first step has gone, right?
Yes. And keeping that vision though, like 12-month area, that like, what am I focused on making sure it looks like in month 12?
Let's talk about the puzzle metaphor. How did that come about, and how does this help people actually assimilate the whole idea that you are talking about?
We talked about earlier the fact that, okay, everybody gets a puzzle, right? Like, so the vision becomes the outside of the box, right? Like your vision is the outside of the box, and okay, let's dump out all those pieces, everyone I've ever spoken to said the first thing you do is flip all the pieces over, right? And that's figuring out what are all the pieces that you have?
Yeah.
If your listeners are puzzle people, I'm going to offend someone, so I'm going to say this is one way to put a puzzle together. Not the only way, but many people first do the border, right? You find all the pieces that it's a straight edge and figure out what the border looks like after you've got all those pieces turned over. That's how you touch the organization, right? The edges are kind of what your role is. It's the boundaries the organization has set on you.
Right.
And okay, so everything we do needs to fit inside the boundaries unless you're going to change the boundaries. And that's, again, back to that would need to be a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, and then very interestingly, as you were explaining just like this image of doing a puzzle and doing the edge, what came to me is that most of the time the edge is neglected, whether it's the people in the edge or people who are in the periphery or customers in the periphery. But if you have taken care of them first and you have moved inside, you are likely to have actually taken care of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's much easier to know what's missing and what's not missing if there's just a little piece missing, right? That rather than trying. And again, back to the vision idea that's the picture on the outside of the box. If you don't have that, it's like getting a puzzle, flipping it over, and all of the pieces are white.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And I like the fact that you start off with the annual goal and then you go, you go deeper, you break it down and you say weekly goals and then daily goals. And that, I think that's very practical and actually gives whoever is going to read the book will get how you sort of drill it down, so that to build it up to the year, you need to drill it down to the day.
And
right?
I will say, one of the things that is probably true in other parts of a corporate organization, but is very true in sales, there is always a fire to put out. There is always something. Right. So as a leader and manager, there's always something coming at you. And if you don't know what your priorities are, you are going to end up leaving at the end of the day exhausted, feeling like you've accomplished nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot in inside sales. That at the end of the day, people felt busy but don't feel like they got anywhere. And that's demotivating, right? Like, string a couple days like that in a row and you feel like, oh, why am I bothering?
Yeah.
Rather than waking up being like, let's do this.
True. Before we wrap this up, I want to touch upon something you had mentioned while we were chatting earlier, that everybody would love to have more leads, right? There is never enough leads. Where are we going wrong with leads, Lynn?
It's funny. So I'm not in marketing, right? I've never been in marketing. Yeah. I think it's very difficult to have enough inbound activity. Again, we've talked about, right, SEO versus AEO, as they're calling, or right. AIO, AI optimization. How things work is always changing, right? I mean, even before AI, Google and LinkedIn change their algorithms for what comes up at the top based on their corporate goals, right? So even if you're doing a great job, that changes. And if you are in a market where you're not the only person that solves a problem, a lot of times what it is that there are many ways to solve somebody's business problem that may not, involve what you do at all, because something else might pop up. my example of that from my own sales career is I lost a deal selling IT equipment, hardware, to them hiring an employee. So the $125,000 they were going to spend with me became someone's salary package. Because it was the perfect fit in the organization. They did not have a job opening. They had to not do something to do that. I would love to tell you that I had an answer. I think that we're in a world where there are so many choices out there that it's hard to get enough attention for you to be, and again, it depends on your organization. But I mean, even me, right? From my business perspective, I don't need thousands of customers, right? Well, now that I've written a book, I would like thousands of people to buy the book. But right, from a, engagement with me for my services perspective, I'm still the one reaching out.
Wonderful. Lynn, thank you so much. But would you like to mention anything specific before we wrap this up?
I would say that the book is a playbook, right? It is designed for someone who may not have it all figured out yet. It's definitely specifically for people who are running an inside sales organization.
Right.
Bits About Books is brought to you by PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. PitchLink makes buying easy by enabling high-quality engagement between buyers and sellers through its presentation and discussion modules. Sellers create customized sales narratives using sales collaterals and personal videos and reach out to prospects through a non-intrusive, buyer-qualified engagement. PitchLink requires no installation or download and holds the entire repository of sales collaterals and buyer-seller conversations. Talk to us to know more about how you can engage with customers without intrusion. Call us on 99021 631 32.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as I did. And we will see you soon with your next book.
There you go again. Thank you.
We have a fantastic lineup over the next couple of episodes with great conversations on breakthrough books. Subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you do not miss a single episode. Thanks for listening. Thank you for being with us today on Bits About Books, where we talk to authors about breakthrough books on sales, marketing, and business. We hope this conversation helped inform and motivate as we all navigate a rapidly changing business environment. For us, these are enlightening conversations enriched with knowledge and expertise. We encourage you to go out and buy the book to learn firsthand and implement some of the great ideas we discussed today. We hope to have you with us again in the next exciting episode of Bits About Books. If you liked what you heard, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast platforms like iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts from, and give us a rating while you are at it.
This Bizcast original podcast is produced for PitchLink, the next generation buyer-seller engagement platform, where the mission is to make buying easy. Hosted by Subhanjan Sarkar and produced by Rajiv Aditya. See you next time and have a wonderful day.